Hey everybody, welcome to RAINER Radio. Today my host is Mark Bell. Mark, thanks so much for being here.
I appreciate it. I got my gummy bears, my Sour Patch Kids, and I have a jug here full of watermelon juice.
Nice. Yeah, we were just talking about like our favorite sugar diet snacks. Um yeah, man, it's candy. It's weird how like candy's on the menu now.
Yeah, I would love to just address that right off the bat because, like, I'm not sure how you want to promote things, but I know for myself, I want to promote things with a little bit of sensitivity. And I also don't want to turn this into another carnivore diet. I don't want to turn this into another keto diet. Like, let's learn from some of the mistakes in the past of just putting like tons of butter on everything. And let's learn, learn to like not overdo. Like, there's no reason to aimlessly overdo sugar. Even we can get into the FGF21 conversation, and we could try to, say that we're working on our insulin sensitivity and stuff. But again, uh, you only require so much energy each day, and you don't need 5,000 calories worth of candy. Candy is also going to dilute the, uh, the nutrients that we're getting, like the micronutrients. Like, we know we're getting carbs from it, but we're not getting all the good things that are in fruit. And if you just use some common sense, fruit, honey, maple syrup, and vegetables, these things are natural and they have a lot of cofactors in them that help aid in digestion, absorption, and so on. So candy is on the menu, but it's like, for myself, it just represents a very small percentage. And I do think that there is some concern over the health of your gums and your teeth. Like, you have to factor some of those things in there. So just, if you're going to eat some candy and you're able to do so in a controlled way and you do it occasionally, I don't see any problem with it. But if you are like sitting down and just going through bags of candy, I don't think that's a great idea.
Yeah, you brought up the kind of carnivore keto thing, and you're right. There seems to be this idea in like the nutrition world, where when you get into these fad diets, there's like some macronutrient or ingredient that you can like brute force your way to health. It's like if I just drink enough MCT oil or if I have enough bulletproof coffee, I will like blow through any other problem. So it's kind of like the reverse. It's kind of like a magic pill in food form, and it's just like I have to force it all the way through, and then something happens.
And I like to have, like, I just had a little bit of candy on the way here, and I just did some explosive movements in the gym. I just told you we were doing some sandbag stuff. Now, I didn't do, an hour of working out. We worked out for like 15 minutes, but it was strenuous. We're lifting up a 125-pound sandbag, shouldering it, walking with it, and so on. And so I think that candy could be like nice leverage, and it could be, I think it causes like this nice hedonic response. Like, you have a like a blow pop on your tongue or something. You're kind of like, whoa, like it feels amazing, and it takes you out of your diet, which is a wonderful thing. Like, changes in mood are fantastic. And I think that's why so many people reach for coffee when they're on other diets, is because they don't want to be here. They don't want to like be in the moment. And so people are reaching for nicotine and caffeine and a lot of other drugs and abusing the shit out of them, because they have a hard time kind of settling down to the present moment, because the diet is kind of it just gets to be bland. Like, you're only on one side with a carnivore diet. Like, if you're doing the carnivore diet strict, or if you're doing keto pretty strict, then you're only on the savory side. You don't really get that much opportunity to be on this other side, this sweet side. And something like a Sour Patch Kid, we put it on your tongue and you just feel like it's going to blow your head off your shoulders.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of one of the things that really drew me to this in the first place was, yeah, I mean, we all want to be super shredded, but the thing that I really got my buy-in was I just feel so good. Like I have so much energy and I feel so good. And it's like, I think caffeine and coffee has its place. I think like nicotine has its place. I think alcohol has its place. But I feel so good all the time that it's like I forget that these things exist. Like it's like it's not that, I'm like doing it to get away from them. It's just like I have so much energy and I'm almost like euphoric. And I just am because of the energy, I start doing more things with my time. I've been making tons more content. Like my Twitter posting is better. I'm making YouTube videos. I'm being more productive in my like my professional life with my family. It's just like all around I'm performing better.
This is like an unbelievable diet. It's an unbelievable find. And I know that there's, like OGs in the space, and I know we got like Durian Ryder, and there's some people have been talking, about like some particulars or some versions of this plan. I know there's fruitarians, like we got to tip our hat to them. Like I think they had some things right, even veganism, vegetarian. I think a lot of these people had some things right, but I think there's some things that maybe um, are just missing from some of those diets to kind of um, get you maximum health. And I think Cole Robinson has done a great job of kind of picking different things from different people. You got Anabology on YouTube with the honey diet. There's a bunch of other people too. Like I hope I'm not missing like some key and crucial people, but if you go back to like the rice diet and some of these diets that help people in the past, with very very brutal diseases like diabetes and heart disease and things like that, and they'll go like 2% or something like that with the protein, 2 to 5% on the fats or something ridiculous like that. It's a super super low. I think even with the rice diet, they had to like add sugar to it to dilute it because rice is like 5% protein, and that's like too much protein for the goal that they were trying to have. And I don't know how much they knew about FGF21 and all that stuff back then, but sugar fasting is absolutely amazing. And it's not a fad, it's a revolution. The sugar diet is superior. The sugar diet is superior. I repeat, it's superior to fasting. The sugar diet is superior to fasting. If you have 2,000 calories from sugar versus having no calories from fasting, you will start to lose more weight when you do that day in and day out versus if you were just regular fasting. There's nothing for your metabolism to meet when you're not consuming any food. And especially for people that have been chronically fasting, there's absolutely, like, I thought fasting was amazing. I loved it. I promoted it. I talk about it a bunch. And I still think like a little bit of intermittent fasting throughout a day or something like that makes some sense. Eat a bunch of fruit in the morning. Maybe you don't eat as much throughout the day. You get like a late lunch or early-ish dinner with a bunch of fruit, and then you finish your night off with however severe you want to like go into the sugar fast. And we can dive into that in a little bit. But I think it's superior. I don't think there's any reason anymore to fast. I think something better has come along. Something has fallen out of the sky from an alien planet called the sugar diet, which absolutely doesn't seem to make any sense on paper, but it's here now for us. And people started using it, and just look at the results that people are getting. That's what you have to look at. Why are so many people losing weight and reporting just some really awesome outcomes? I realize there's a honeymoon period, but there's some people who've been on this for months, and there's some people that have even been doing this for years. There's what's the guy's name? Vitality. You know that guy?
I just saw him because they amplified Vitality. I think something like.
Amplified Vitality on YouTube. You have to listen to him. Holy shit, that guy is absolutely incredible. I can't wait to interview him. I lost his name here for a second, but he's absolutely incredible with explaining the science and stuff. And his videos are from like 8 years ago. So he's been kind of doing some of this for a long time. And I also like what Cole is promoting and saying, look, you don't even have to do this every day, but a day of sugar fasting is so powerful, it could make up for maybe not such a productive diet the day before.
Yeah, I mean, that's like, I think of this as a tool, and it's a really, really powerful tool. And, when it comes to diet, like you get these like really weird fads in these cultures. And that's the kind of thing that like can really put you off of stuff is, like if you're a vegan and you have like one piece of cheese, it's like you're just ostracized like forever. In carnivore, it's like you're allowed. Carnivore was funny because you're allowed to cheat, but you have to acknowledge that it was bad. It's like you're more forgiven, but like it's like, but that's you can't like recommend it. And the reason why I started intermittent fasting when I was in college, I was reading Martin Berkhan. Do you remember Lean Gains?
Yeah.
And for me, the reason why I kind of started doing it was because I just kind of felt like I was getting bloated from food. And so I got really drawn to fasting, not like multiple day extreme fasting, just intermittent fasting, because it meant I could go through more of the day without being bloated. And that's one of the things that I really love about sugar fasting more than anything is I can get all of that same effect, but not have any of the negatives of my metabolism slowing down and me being low energy. You get to actually use your metabolism versus like driving all these stress hormones and making yourself arguably worse than you were before. And then this is, I want to kind of bring up Ray Peat, because you were saying that you've been on his thing for a while now, and I think that's where I came to this from. That's where anabology came to this from. I'm pretty sure that's where amplified vitality came to this from. And so I'm really curious how Ray Peat influenced you and your progression with nutrition.
Yeah, I started listening to Ray Peat, years and years ago. I was doing a lot of like personal development stuff. I was listening to a lot of different, people talking about personal development. This is probably, maybe like 15 years ago or 10 years ago or something like that. And I'd get bored with that. And then I would start digging back into nutrition. I'd kind of toggle back and forth between something I love that I'm passionate about and something that I'm just trying to learn. I didn't really know anything about personal development. So I was like diving into it, and a lot of the language and information was like new to me, and it can be exhausting when you're like learning something new. But nutrition is something that I have always loved. I've been studying it since I was maybe like 14 or 15. I've been on, every diet protocol you can pretty much think of. I remember doing the zone diet. I remember doing body opus. I remember, just so many different things. The metabolic diet. I just done a lot of them. I haven't done them all, but I've done a lot of them. And yeah, I just ran into some videos from Ray Peat where he's on that park bench, and it's just a picture of him on a park bench, and he's just like, there's audio of him talking, and he was just saying some really interesting things, and I had to keep rewinding it because it was new to me, and I was like, wait, what did he just say? He's helping to cure diabetes with like sugar and like carbohydrate, and I had to like back it up and listen to it again. And I was thoroughly confused. And I remember him talking about people being at like altitude. And I remember him talking about CO2. And I remember him talking about cancer. And there's just some amazing things that are going on right now with some of those exact things that he shared. And I think some of those things might end up being like maybe not a total cure by themselves for cancer, but I think that shit's coming. And so Ray Peat was way ahead of his time. I remember him talking about carrots and carrots getting rid of like phytoestrogens in the body and being like a good like detox. And Stan Efferding, who wrote The Vertical Diet, adopted some of the principles that Ray Peat talked about and added it into his plan. He tells people all the time, like, have some carrots every day. I think his cranberry juice comes from the same thing. Stan was always like, hey, hit the liver with a little bit of sugar to get your thyroid stimulated. And it just turns out as like, some really great information. I never really dove into like a ton of Ray Peat stuff. Like I didn't end up getting into the Twitter and X stuff that's on, the all the other information about Ray Peat, but just a lot of the YouTube videos. And I just found it like eye-opening. It opened my mind up to the possibility that some of the diets that I've been doing, why they've been fairly helpful in some ways. They also, if I take them too far in one direction, they could potentially cause some danger, and they can potentially impede or impair my metabolism. And so that's been on my radar for quite some time. In like the last 5 years or so, even though I've been a fan of like low carb, I don't usually even bother to say keto because keto is like harder to do. And I actually think that keto is kind of still awesome because it's low protein and it's low carbohydrate. So I think when you knock out 2 macronutrients, I think you have a pretty productive diet.
Yeah, it seems like everyone who calls themselves keto is just it's just low carb. But yeah, similar to I'll be 35 in 2 weeks, and I started going to the gym with my dad when I was 11 years old. So it's like I've been doing this almost 25 years, and it's like I've always wanted to try new things. I wanted to learn and experiment with different training styles and all different kinds of diets. And through all this experience, it's like you're accumulating more tools. But like you said, you found something that works, but it turns out it maybe didn't work in a good way. And that's where I think the what the sugar diet does is it's kind of building on the pro metabolic principles of what Ray Peat's work was. Is that you can get a good result in the gym or with your performance or your physique, and you can do it like the healthy way, or you can do it the stress metabolism way. And I think now we're kind of at this point where we can start sifting through our experiences and a lot of the information that's out there. And if we want to take something that's going to, that we want to give to people as tools, let's kind of focus on and identify which are the ones that are working positively with the body. And so, you mentioned like fasting versus with sugar. Don't quote me on this because I don't remember the specifics, but I'm fairly certain they did a study where they had two groups of people and one fasted completely for a week. I think it was like water fasting with electrolytes. And the other group just added sugar. And the sugar group lost more fat and retained more lean body mass. And I think that's what we're trying to do is we're just trying to make all of this better. We're trying to optimize our tools and our interventions.
Sugar fasting is amplified fasting. And, Walter Longo actually, who, talks about kind of these longer fasts where you fast for 5 days to 7 days. He actually has a whole business off of it. He sells products to eat while you're fasting because he's aware of this. My friend Joel Green has talked about this a lot. Like Joel, I remember when I was doing some fasting, he's like, you'd be better off having like 1 or 2 eggs every morning and having like an avocado and, having a little bit of fruit here and there and stuff like that, just to kind of, because, like you'll feel hungrier if you eat breakfast usually. For a lot of people, like if you eat breakfast, no matter kind of what it's comprised of, you have breakfast at like 8 a.m., sure as shit, 12:30 rolls around, you're really, really hungry, as opposed to if you didn't eat anything at all. And I think that hunger signal probably hits us for a particular reason. It probably is in tune with our food. And when you're getting food, your body probably is, burning a little bit more calories, just kind of a hypothesis, but it certainly feels that way. And I think that sugar fasting is just a version of being able to amplify the fast because you're giving yourself energy. And if you think about just from an output standpoint, just from like this stuff, the meat and what about like your will? No one ever really talks about like your will. What about your will just being like drained? You could take, Tom Brady. You can take whatever famous athlete, LeBron James, whatever these people are that are really high performers, The Rock, and inject these people with diabetes, give them something that causes a ton of inflammation to their ankle and their knees, inject them with something that makes them feel depressed, anxious. Okay. Are they getting off the couch that day when like, these are the toughest, these are the best, right? But no, they're not going to get off the couch that day because your health is compromised. There's so many other things are compromised that it drains your will. And that's what a lot of people, just think of, some people weigh 200 pounds, but some people weigh 400 pounds. How long could you stand there with a 200-pound weight vest on? Like not very long. You'd start to be super uncomfortable and you'd have the luxury of taking that off. But there's some people that are going through every single day like that. And so day in and day out, their will is drained. They don't have, you hear people say that they're exhausted. Oh my God, I'm exhausted. I hear people say it all the time. I'm exhausted. I've eliminated that word like years ago because I just didn't feel it was like productive. I'm like, I'm going to get rid of that shit. I'm not going to say it anymore. I'm never going to say I'm swamped. I hate stuff like that. So I try to just, not that I'm ignoring it, but I want to develop skill sets to be able to handle every single thing that comes at me in life. And in my opinion, when you're doing the sugar diet, it's like injecting you with will. It's injecting you with a skill set to be able, when life tries to take you down, it gives you the ability to sprawl. It gives you the ability to balance and still stay on your feet and to think quickly. And for myself, and a lot of people that are, popping up in the comment section on my YouTube channel and stuff, I'm just seeing it's not everyone. It's not everyone all the time. Not everyone is losing weight on the diet, and not everyone is immediately feeling better. So I don't want to ignore the people that are saying that they're shitting their pants. I don't want to ignore the people that are saying that they're not getting results from it. But normally, it's because they're not actually following the diet very well. which has happened with keto and has happened with carnivore. We've seen it happen time and time again, but there are people that probably are specifically following it, and for whatever reason, their stomach or their body is not handling it well. But again, I just want to get back to that point of like, when you have this amount of energy coming in, you almost can't help to express yourself and want to pour that out into in some way. And people are kind of very nervous about this diet because of their insulin levels. And because of, they're probably worried that they're pre-diabetic, or maybe they are pre-diabetic or even diabetic. The genius of this diet, and what Cole Robinson, I think, has pioneered, maybe some other people have been in the background of that, but what I think Cole has addressed is that we're working off of fructose over here. So people might not understand fructose doesn't have the same demand for insulin to be able to get into the cells and be able to fill the liver up with glycogen. So you kind of you're bypassing some of that a bit. And so that gets in like a whole nother thing. But like, if you want to really train your insulin sensitivity, maybe after you do this for a while, and as Cole's saying, you lose a bunch of weight, because being fat is shooting the alligator closest to the boat. You're fucking fat. You need to get the fat off of you. You need to be less fat. So you lose 100 pounds, 120 pounds, and that's when maybe you start to think about, okay, I want to add starch in there a little bit. I want to add some sourdough bread. I want to have some potatoes. I want to have some rice. And you can certainly eat some of those things along the way as well. It's just that your progress might be a little bit slower, which slower sometimes is better because it might be more sustainable. You might be able to do the whole entire diet for longer. And so rather than doing like 100 days in a row of sugar fasting, maybe you sprinkle 100 days of sugar fasting into a 365 day year. Like, to me, that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, like it's for me, and like I was saying earlier, it's this really powerful tool, right? And that's what I think is the most important thing for people to take away from it. And you mentioned like you think you're trying to figure out why some people aren't doing as well on it. And I know that Cole says not to worry so much about the science and the FGF21. And I tend to be like, I'm not like a science guy. I'm a bro science guy. I'm just like, give me the basics and I'll try it and then I'll understand it for myself. But I love it for the people like Anabology and for all the work of Ray Peat, because it's like they just give you something to look at, to understand it. And then I kind of take it back to like, let me play with this thing. And I think what is happening is some people genetically, they don't have as strong of an FGF21 response, or it's possible that their liver is a little damaged. And I think, because I know, because a lot of people tell me that the only reason I can do this is because I'm burning it off. I'm burning off the sugar. And I think they have it totally backwards. I have the sugar first and it gives me so much energy that I want to do things. And, it's been said, like, if you've been in the diet world for any time at all, the classic thing is the people who have a quote unquote fast metabolism are leaner because they burn it off through fidgeting. But the framing is like, they can get away with it. It's no, your metabolism is firing so great that your body has an excess of energy that it can quite literally burn off. And so the motivation comes, and I've seen this in the comments in your videos and Cole Robinson videos. They say, I just have so much energy. I just want to go do things now. And I think that's, if we can get people who can't get that figured out, and that might require a little bit more homework, maybe a little bit more of the Ray Peat stuff, like maybe coffee helps heal the liver a little bit. Maybe some aspirin might help heal the liver a little bit. And if they're not getting the results, to experiment with that. And then all of a sudden, now the liver is going to start kicking into gear and we're going to start getting that energy.
It's interesting because I think what's happening is like, because you're feeding yourself energy, you're like producing more energy. Maybe a little bit hard to explain or hard to even sort of fathom, but like, I guess I could say it maybe like this. Like, if you were to feed yourself 2,500 calories that are absent of fat and protein, and it's predominantly just the sugars that we've mentioned, like fruit, candy, and honey, and maple syrup, and straight table sugar, things of that nature. If you were to feed yourself, 2,500 calories of that, it feels like, and I just suppose that your calorie burn is going up, but your energy production just feels like it's more efficient. So your energy production feels like someone that maybe needs 3,500 calories. But for some reason, for some unknown reason, you do not feel like you are in a caloric deficit. I believe that this diet, and hopefully I'm not speaking out of my ass and talking about this too early, but I don't feel like I am. I feel like I've done my homework. I feel like I've been aware of this diet for a little over a year. Before I ever even sunk my teeth into it, I've been doing it for about a little over 2 months now. I've lost about 12 pounds myself. I'm getting way leaner. With the leanness that I have right now, moving forward from here, as I lose another 10 to 12 pounds, it's almost impossible that I wouldn't feel like shit. Like it's almost impossible. I still don't feel like shit though, and I feel like I can keep going. I don't feel like I'm at some sort of breaking point. I think that this diet is going to change so many things for so many people. I think it's going to help people that are obese. I think it's going to help some athletes. It may not be for everyone, because there might be people that like want to gain weight, and there could be more appropriate diets for gaining weight. There could be more appropriate diets for particular diseases and just particular goals in general. Marathon runners, sprinters, they might have, they might not even need to worry about a diet. That's something that we kind of tend to leave out, is that the people that live the longest, like the centurions and stuff like that, they don't even really think about their diet ever. They just like eat and they go through their day, and they just happen to be like 5 feet tall. They don't weigh much. And they just kind of have a couple of, they usually have a couple of things that are fairly healthy. But I think the sugar diet, is going to bleed into the physique world, like where people are getting on stage, bikini athletes, figure athletes, both male, female, and bodybuilding. I think that you're going to see this leak out into bodybuilding, because bodybuilders are always killing themselves to get down to that last little bit percentage. And it'd be interesting, can you get to 4% body fat without feeling like shit? And maybe you can't. Like maybe some people can, and maybe other people just can't. Maybe they have to kind of feel like crap when they're on stage. Some people, bring up that I'm on PEDs, and they're like, well, Mark's on PEDs, and it just makes everything easier. Sure, I agree. It makes everything easier. That's why I do them. I love them. But anyone that's ever done a bodybuilding show understands that even though you take performance enhancing drugs, and even though you train all the time, and you have to do like 60 to 90 minutes of cardio every single day, guess what has to happen leading into a bodybuilding show? Your calories go whoop. Your calories have to go way down, all the way to the point where somebody that is as big as Chris Bumstead, he might be 235 or 240 pounds on stage, being 4 or 5% body fat, striated everywhere, striated glutes and the whole thing, look absolutely incredible. But even for him at that size, with the traditional diets that are being used now, he's at like 1,600 calories for like a month or two. That's insanity. Like that's completely nuts. So you would figure that the performance enhancing drugs would assist him enough, or assist any of these guys enough, to where they would be able to have, 2,000 or 2,500 calories. 1,600 calories for a guy that's that big and strong just doesn't seem to make any sense to me. And I'm pretty sure, I'm not 100% positive, and that's why I'm like testing it out on myself. And I don't think that, just me doing it and getting shredded means much of anything, but I do think it is proof in one direction of like, hey, well, this dude is like 5% body fat, and he's just like hanging out there, and this is like his new look, and this is his new body weight. So for myself, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to prove it more to myself, and I'm trying to do it more as an exploration for myself, and just having people follow along. Where people end up with this particular diet, who knows? But I think all of that is super fascinating. Normally, to get really, really lean, to get really, really shredded, even getting down into single digit body fat, is usually a crazy, crazy goal for somebody, and it's usually a crazy chore. I think that getting into lower body fats for a lot of people, even just people that want to see like a bicep vein and be at 15 or 16% or whatever percentage they need to be to kind of see some of that, I think they'll be able to get there much easier with the sugar diet.
Yeah, I've been thinking for some time now that like as the Ray Peat world collides with bodybuilding, there's going to be a lot of really new interesting stuff happening. And the way that you kind of framed it, you're not really sure what's happening, but there's more energy being produced. That's where I think the meat and potatoes of all of this is you're very right. Like, okay, if the people who like maybe they call them the evidence-based people who just scream at you like calories in, calories out, you got to be calorie deficit. That's like the only words they know how to say is like calorie deficit. Like I'm not denying that you have to be in a calorie deficit to lose weight. But if you eat more food and then that induces the calorie deficit, why am I not feeling like I'm on a calorie deficit? And that's the thing that it's like there's and again it almost doesn't matter. If it works, then I don't I don't really care as long as it works, like I'll take that to the bank every day. And I know for myself because I actually was very much influenced by Stan Efferding, which I probably have you to thank for that, because you really brought him to my awareness, and you did like long content with him, and the way I always told people once I learned about Ray Peat is the vertical diet is peating for bodybuilders. It's like it's the similar concepts. And what I found is after being inspired by him and then just taking what I was doing for my own body as far as I wanted, what I found was when I would eat like a bodybuilder breakfast, I just felt like I had food stuck in my belly and I didn't want to go train. And I was like, okay, I don't want an intermittent fast because need to fuel my workout better. And I just naturally decided I'm only going to have fruit, maybe Greek yogurt and oatmeal for breakfast and for lunch now. And so I kind of started doing like a maybe not sugar fasting, but like a sugar and a carb and dairy fasting. And then they'll load all my meat and rice at night. And when I did that in 2019, it was probably my best like shape, physique, and performance ever. And I'm about 6 feet tall, and I was 195 pounds, 10% body fat, which isn't like the craziest thing ever, but I mean, I looked pretty darn good. And I never had to go beneath 3,000 calories to do that.
Mm.
And I was just cramming. I would have, frozen berries, Greek yogurt, oatmeal, and drizzle honey over it for breakfast. And then I would drink a half gallon of orange juice during my training, and I'd go have an acai bowl after that, and I'd go to the gym again. And so there's something I think that it's like, you mentioned like Chris Bumstead eating 1,600 calories. It's like tiny women don't eat that little and they can maintain their body weight. And so you have to think about what is your body not doing to conserve itself, to survive. All of your other metabolic processes have to slow down. And so you are destroying your health. And, I mean, not that anyone might say that bodybuilding is like the epitome of health, but like it's supposed to be health and fitness, right? Like, and if we can do the fitness part, if we can do the physique and the performance part and not kill our health if we don't need to, we can do this so much better.
We had Mitchell Hooper on the podcast yesterday, and he's World's Strongest Man champion. He's won the Arnold Classic. He's won, every thing you can think of for World's Strongest Man competitions. And he was talking about your health, and how like he's like, I understand this endeavor that I'm doing. There are performance enhancing drugs in strongman. They don't test for it, and the guys are huge. The weights that the guys are asked to lift are astronomical. These guys are picking up 400-pound stones. They're walking with a yoke, which is like almost looks like a squat rack that you put on your back. They're walking with like 1,600 pounds, and so they have to be enormous. And usually they're like 350, 400 pounds. But Mitchell is undersized compared to the other strongmen. He's still like 6'2", 6'3", 325 pounds. So he's still an absolute monster. But it was he was saying on the show is like, he's like, I don't want to compromise my health so much. I realize it's partially compromised. He's like, I don't mind signing up for that. But if I have to be 350 or 380 pounds to do some of these lifts, he's like, I don't want any part of it. And he felt exactly what you said. He feels like when he's his healthiest, that he performs his best. And I think that's what a lot of people should be probably targeting and looking for. Because as you know, I'm sure you've done it before. I've heard a lot of your content, and even from myself, I've over fasted before. I've over ketoed before. I've over exercised before. Like I overdone everything, in an effort to like learn, for myself and to learn for people, to communicate to people better about like, yo, don't do this. This is not a good idea. This is dumb. This is how I tore my pec, or this is how, I hurt myself doing this thing. And I think, having some of that exploration into some of the extremes, when you're doing something like dry fasting or you're doing some of these protocols, I think sometimes some of these protocols are great because they ask you to sort of like man up, and they test some of your will and they test some of your strength. But again, this is an option with weight loss where it doesn't feel like it's as much of a test of will. And of course, there's going to be a case of the fuckets that happen all the time where you're like, I would just really love to eat a burrito. I would really love to just eat pizza. But even with what Cole is sharing, I'm on this mission to get down to 200 pounds and just to be completely shredded. So I'm focused. I'm honed in. I don't feel like I need a pizza at the moment. But what Cole is sharing is like, hey, maybe, maybe you do have pizza on the weekend. He's like, what's the big deal? You just go back to the sugar fast the next day. And I think sometimes with a message like that, I halfway agree with it, halfway disagree with it, because I know for people that are fat and they've been struggling for a long time with their weight and they're obese, it's like, got to be really careful with what you tell them. Their interpretation of like, hey, go enjoy yourself on Saturday is quite different than you and I, we're going to be like prissy about it.
Yeah.
We're going to be like, well, maybe I should have like some lean protein before so I can protein leverage, or like we should fast into it, or like we're going to try to gamify it. We're going to be like, I should probably get on the assault bike today or something like that. But normal people, when you tell them like have at it, they're probably going to go like way overboard.
Yeah. Well, again, it's like you have to know who you're talking to. It's like sometimes you forget that like not everyone is a lifelong gym bro who's just obsessed with all this stuff. And that's where like I do think that a lot of the power in this is the cyclical nature of it. You mentioned the metabolic diet. I have always been drawn to uh, diet approaches that sort of segment the way that you eat. And so I did carb backloading. I did do intermittent fasting. I did do the metabolic diet, cyclical ketogenic diet. And even when I know I kind of followed what I would consider to be like a paleo-esque bodybuilding diet, which was mostly just about like food quality. And I was still eating like at least 300 grams of carbs a day on my training days. But on my rest days, I would do like a low carb keto day to like get metabolic flexibility. At least that's what I thought I was doing. So like it allowed me to on a Sunday go to a bar with my buddies, and I would eat like 20, 30, 40 chicken wings and be in a caloric deficit, not drink any beer, and be like, oh, all those fatty foods that I was craving I had, and now I can go back to my leaner, quote unquote, stricter diet. So there is a lot of room for flexibility, and that's why again I really think of this as like a tool. And even within that, you have like individual tools. If you can recognize that a sugar fasting segment is a really powerful tool, but then also like the lean meat and veggies part of the dinner is also a part of the tool. Like it's not like this wrong thing that you're doing. And so like today, for instance, it's actually the first day in a long time I haven't done like the sugar diet framework, but I'm just doing a milk diet today. I'm drinking nothing but raw goat milk today. And I found that personally I get like a really good feeling from when I do that, and I honestly also lose weight when I do that too.
Mm.
And so I'm not saying that someone should go out and do a milk day, but like I through my experience I basically uncovered days or halves of days, and I think like that's where the cool stuff is. You figure out how to put these things together. How can I combine a sugar day with like last night I had sushi for dinner, right? So it's like I balanced a lean. Okay, I wanted lean protein for dinner, and I add a little bit more starch. And then now I feel a different kind of way today, and it's like, I feel like milk is going to get me closer to my goals for today, and then tomorrow I'll go back to like a sugar fast.
And some people are thinking that this diet is unbalanced and a lot of these things, but like when you have a day that's off and you were to look at the macros over the course of time, you would see that there's some balance to it. And even for myself, if you were look at my macros from last year to this year, the macros would be balanced because I was low carb before and now I'm high carb, right? And there would be kind of a mix of stuff in there, right? And then for a lot of people, like let's just face the facts too. I know this from firsthand experience as well. When I first started keto, when I first started carnivore, first started paleo, I cheated on the diets all the time too. Every 3 or 5 days or whatever. And it wasn't like I had like some big blowout cheat and had to like spend 5 days recovering from it. But I have done that before. I've done that a bunch of times. And so I think there's a lot of people that are like they want to claim carnivore. They want to kind of grab onto this thing or this situation because it feels good to them. It feels good for them to be part of a group and they feel like they're doing the right thing for themselves. And they sure as shit might be. They might be doing the right thing for themselves. But they're maybe not realizing the damage that they're doing. Even if you do follow the carnivore diet, I do think there's some concerns about the amount of fat that you're consuming. Could be messing with your insulin sensitivity. For some people, they're like, oh, well, if I go carnivore, or even if I do a low carb diet, I'm going to like cure my insulin resistance. It's like, well, no, I think you're actually just dodging it, and you're not necessarily curing it. Like the way to cure it, and it appears as we gather more and more information. And if you go back to like the rice diet, some of these other diets that have been perpetuated from years and years ago that seem to have a lot of efficacy for for helping people with diabetes. It seems like the way to go through just about anything in life, the way to go through having that nagging pain in your knee is to do myofascial release or to see a practitioner that does active release therapy or something like that, does cupping and scraping. What does that do? Well, that hurts like a motherfucker, right? Like that hurts tremendously, but it helps get rid of the pain. So the way to get to the prize in life is always to go through something. And if we thought diabetes was like a sugar thing, well, it's interesting that it turns out maybe the very way to get out of diabetes is to eat a bunch of sugar.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things that I really learned from the Ray Peat stuff is that like metabolic damage is actually an excess of like circulating free fatty acids, right? It's not that you have too much glucose, but it's you have too much fatty acids in the system. Um, and you mentioned like the kind of cheating thing, and you did carnivore, and I will kind of I had this idea that I think a lot of people that do the best on strict diets do so because they don't adhere to them strictly. Like the person who thinks they're low carb but like cheats with carbs like once a week is accidentally doing the metabolic diet and like saving their metabolism. And I remember when I started doing CrossFit in college, and my CrossFit coach, who was like a high level CrossFit competitor, was telling me like, oh, you just don't eat carbs and like paleo. It's like you feel amazing. To then find out that he would like eat a large pizza and ice cream every like Friday night, and he'd eat a bunch of nut butter, which like had a bunch of carbs in it. And I think like that's kind of where I mean I know this is the sugar diet thing is also new, but I think that's where we can really like get ahead of this and help people down the line because one of the things I did learn from Ray Peat that I think is really important is that as you increase your metabolic rate, all of your nutritional requirements also increase as well. So you're burning through all of your vitamins, all of your minerals faster. And my last episode, I had on this guy who does like mineral balancing. If you have too much iron, you need more copper, and this thing and that. And so, what I have noticed, and I'm curious that your experience is, when as I do the sugar diet, and especially if I sugar fast for a couple days, you really start to feel what cravings you actually have. And I've noticed that my biggest craving is without a doubt for seafood. And I know you mentioned, that you also eat shrimp and scallops, and shrimp's like my main protein source. And it turns out like shrimp's really high in copper, and these seafood seafoods are high in copper and selenium, and maybe that's really important for our metabolism, and that's why we get the cravings. And I'm curious if anything else has sort of been like revealed to you from pushing it.
Yeah, last night I crushed a bunch of scallops. It was just absolutely amazing. I think I am discovering like different foods too because of what you're talking about. Like you're talking about these cravings. I actually like I know I kind of have known myself a little bit uh as someone that kind of has a sweet tooth. However, I didn't realize the severity of it until I tried the sugar diet because like I can pour maple syrup on on Sour Patch Kids and enjoy the hell out of it. Like I can be pretty nuts with like the amount of sugar that I can consume in like in a quick period of time. And I didn't really know that about myself previously. I thought like, oh well, of course, like everyone loves fat and sugar, so everyone loves a donut, everyone loves cookies, everyone loves peanut butter cups, and whatever your favorite, chocolate candies are. But the cravings for those things have completely disappeared because I'm eating the Starburst jelly beans and Sour Patch Kids and all these other things. That response that I'm getting from those things is almost overwhelming. It's a lot of sugar, and sometimes like this morning when I had some jarred peaches that are in like some high fructose corn syrup. I dumped that into a bowl with a bunch of other fruit, and then I put sugar on top of it, and I dumped some maple syrup in there, and it's just this like syrupy thing that has frozen blueberries and raspberries and a banana and some other fruits in there. I think bananas are okay, by the way, for people that are always asking about bananas. I just say go for it. But anyway, as I'm eating this, I'm like, man, I should probably put the rest of this away. This is like so sweet. But I finished it. But yeah, I think having those foods has really kind of shown me that my taste buds are actually a little bit different than I thought, and I think I'm kind of retraining them and recalibrating them. I actually also really enjoy just the flavor of fruit in general, like just especially this time of year. This time of year, it's like seasonal, and that's also another possibility of the sugar diet, sugar fasting, is that maybe we're making too big of a deal about this thing, and maybe it's more of just a seasonal thing, and maybe we go back into our cave when it gets to be cold, and we eat meat again.
Hey everybody, we had a little bit of technical difficulty there, and we'll resume really quickly, but I realized that Mark and I never picked back up that part of the conversation. And I think we were talking about the seasonality potentially of the diet. And one of the things I think will be interesting to explore is how well this diet works for people in colder climates during winter. We really, I don't know, especially as it's gotten super popular now, but I think that'll be something worth exploring. And I'll leave it at that.
I had something I wanted to talk to you about a little bit and kind of ask you is, being involved in CrossFit, I found it super interesting. Like I was pro CrossFit myself, even though I was in the middle of my powerlifting career. I wasn't actually doing CrossFit, but I love the movement, and I did some seminars. I taught people powerlifting, the people that were doing CrossFit, and I saw like a lot of the conversation in CrossFit was about eating more. At least that's what I saw. It wasn't about eating less. It was about eating more. And you had Rob Wolf coming in there teaching about paleo. And I remember talking to some of the girls, the really high level girls, and they're shredded and they're freaking jacked. And some of my male friends, they're always trying to count their calories, and they would be on these diets. Every guy was on the same diet. Every guy was on 2,000 calories a day and 200 grams of protein. It's like a joke. It's like, what are you doing? And none of them are like getting results. None of them look that good. And I just always thought there's something like inherently wrong with this picture. And then after talking to some of these CrossFit girls, they're having like 3,200 calories a day. And I was like, shit, man. See, I knew there was something stupid about counting your calories and trying to track and like under eating all the time. And that's what a lot of men and women do that. And I think they just constantly are teaching their body to be like metabolically inefficient is what I've seen. And you yourself being in CrossFit and I know you said you've done a lot of versions of paleo. Did you see some of that as well? CrossFit stuff.
Yeah, CrossFit. So I remember because like I started CrossFit in college, and so I got into paleo from that. And then by the end, I realized that like I just wasn't getting the results I wanted, like physique wise and performance wise. And so I got into like macro counting and eating a lot more carbs. Um, and once I did that, all of a sudden it became very easy to manipulate my physique and get good performance. And that was around the time, maybe a few years after that, is when um, all of the macro counting like hit the CrossFit competitors in that world. So Renaissance periodization came in, working against gravity. There was maybe another one there, and all of a sudden, like I actually talked about this on one of my most recent episodes. You remember Katrin David's daughter? Like she, the Icelandic chick, she won a
Yes.
couple times. The first year that she won, she was like soft, and in her previous career, she had kind of been like one of, and not that she's chubby, you know. Again, she's like a CrossFit Games competitor, but she was like just very soft looking for someone who was such a high performing athlete. And she hired working against gravity. And the next year she looked like a on stage like physique competitor at the
Mm,
games, right? And so I think like, but a big part about that was you have to eat way more carbs and cut out the fat, but then
right.
again also keeping the macros in check. And that's where that shift really happened. And then for me, like I actually, even though I worked out at a CrossFit gym and I was in the world, I was a strongman. I competed in strongman. And so, you know, Deuce Gym, we had that whole strongman set up, and Logan and I and a girl Emily, we all went to nationals in 2016, and I had to cut like 25 pounds to make the 200-pound class,
Shit.
and it was super easy. Like I hadn't destroyed my metabolism, so it was really easy to just like manipulate my body weight with like slight macro counting and like not feel like shit. And it was high carb and low fat. Like that's just like that's what it was. And you know that's where I think like I know how to count macros. I did it for over a decade, but I'm more concerned with the way that I feel. And for people to lose weight and to perform better, like that's what the and that's where CrossFit is different from a physique person is you have to perform. Your sport isn't your body fat percentage, your sport is how much weight you can lift and how fast you can do it. And I think the performance and the physique actually need to be more aligned to get better results for people.
Counting your macros, and especially like just paying attention to like having those fats really low. I've always been a big fan of, like, I would say that you could have lost weight just as well without even bothering to count the macros if you just were like responsible in understanding that the only meats that you're going to eat are going to be super lean. But what tracking gives you an advantage of is like you can kind of do a little tit for tat, and you can kind of say, okay, well, I can have cheese on this because I didn't have that much fat today. And you can kind of see at the end of the day that you could maybe throw in more fat. But like really, if you just were having very, very lean sources of protein, you wouldn't even have to really track. And that's been that's been something I've been communicating about for a while. Is I understand that people like to track and they like to count and they like their Fitbit watch and their Whoop and their mattress that does this and that, and like they love all these markers and stuff. But I think things are just about they're more about choices than they are about like gadgets, than they are about apps and keeping track of how many calories that you're eating. And if you're a CrossFit athlete or you're someone that's very active, you know, one of the main things for you to figure out how to accomplish is to reduce the stress levels of all these things that you're doing every day. And a great way to reduce the stress levels of these things would be via carbohydrates. And because you're going to be utilizing a lot of carbohydrates, it only makes sense to chop out some of the other energy source, which is your fat, and mainly run off of carbs. Carbs are going to get you, especially like high level CrossFitters, they work out multiple times a day. And so now you need fast acting energy. And the only fast acting energy you're going to be able to really use is going to be carbohydrate. And so you're just going to be blasting, you know, carbohydrates to get from one workout to the next to recover from each workout. And I think even beyond NEAT and beyond, we mentioned like will and just like motivation and like wanting to move more. I think that when you go to move more, you're going to move more with more vigor. You're going to move more with a little bit more intensity, a little bit more oomph. For every rep that you do, for every time you toss the med ball, you're probably producing a tiny bit more force. For every time you're on the assault bike, for every time you're doing push-ups, for every time you're doing jump rope or whatever it is, you're probably able to exponentially perform it in a micro fashion that you can probably barely calculate, but it's still better than what you were doing previously when you weren't consuming carbohydrates like that. So I think there's like these little kind of minuscule things that we miss, that we maybe haven't paid attention to yet. But I think more and more people are going to be made aware of this as they're starting to do the sugar diet.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing is I literally feel compelled to move more and do more things. And that's what I'm far more productive. I'm more creative. I'm just becoming a better person. And, this is one thing that During Rider says a lot is like, if you want to be a good cyclist, you need to carb the fuck up. But like he says, if you want to be a good father, you also need to carb the fuck up, because you need energy to go to work and make money and come home and play with your kids and have sex with your wife and like do all these good things. And that's where the idea that your whole life is like you are an athlete. Everyone in the world is an athlete. No one would like look at like a cheetah and say like, well, only some of them are athletes. No. We're human
Right.
beings. We're all athletes. And so our day, every day should be a performance sport. And, when you want to perform, like you're basically eating pre-workout, peri-workout, post-workout nutrition throughout the day. And if I want to keep this going, I don't want to sit down and have a giant steak for lunch, because I don't want to take a nap. You probably don't know this, but during COVID, I was living in LA and I lost my job. And so I decided to move to Colorado and go like live on a farm for a couple years. And, for every day for lunch on the farm, they would serve like the meat that was like raised on the farm. And then I would always just want to like lay down afterwards. And like, I don't want to go milk cows right now. But if I had thought about it from a like a performance perspective, what I would have eaten for lunch is a bunch of fruit and like maybe a little bit of milk or something.
Mm.
And I would have had a bunch of energy and I would have felt light and I would have gone after it more. And I think that's the big shift is when I try to explain to people, it's like, think about your diet, like sugar fasting or just like doing the sugar part of the day. Just think that you're doing pre-workout nutrition right now, or you're doing intra-workout nutrition right now, and that will fuel you to get through everything and to perform at a higher level.
Yeah, and intra-workout and pre-workout and all these things for, and from a nutritional standpoint, I think makes a lot of sense. And I think, I know there's some people that they don't really love like exercise and stuff like that, but I think it's important that people find exercise or some versions of it. And I wish that people were exposed to exercise the way I've been exposed to exercise, which is I've been exposed to so many vast and so many different forms of exercise that I'm never bored. I don't have a training split. I'm never a person that says I have to. Oh, I have to go in the gym and I have to squat today. I have to go in. I have to do 3 sets of 10 of this. I don't have like have tos like that. I just work out pretty much every day. And sometimes it's shorter than other days, depending on how much crap is in the day. But like at the very minimum, I'm going to walk for a mile or two with like a 15-pound weighted vest. That would be like on a day where I just didn't get inside the gym. And when I was running more a while back, and I'll start to bring my running back in soon, it was very common for me to run, 3 miles like every other day. And I realized like not everyone has the energy or capacity or the time to do these things. And I'm not saying like they should do them with the frequency that I do them at, or the intensity that I do them at. But I think that it'd be great for people to find like a handful of things they enjoy. So that way there's less roadblocks. So if you have a skill set of like swimming, I think you owe it to yourself to go, sign up for a place that has a swimming pool. And you owe it to yourself to get in some swimming workouts here and there since you already have a skill set with it. So whatever the skill set is that you have, or whatever the thing is that you liked when you were young, I think you need to try to figure out a way to get back into it. Maybe you played baseball when you were young and you've been thinking about, signing up for a softball league. That would be amazing because now you're getting outside and you're getting activity, and you got to be able to like sprint to the bases and throw the ball hard and all those different things. And so I realize not everyone's going to like love the gym, but even gym related stuff, there's so many things that you could do. You could push a sled, you can do a farmer's carry. Like there's so many things that you can do where you just actually take some of the equipment that might be in the gym and you take some of it outside. Or if you get a CrossFit membership or you get a membership at some of these gyms, a lot of these gyms now, they look like a strength and conditioning. They look like they're part of an athletic department, strength and conditioning weight room, rather than the old school weight rooms of Gold's Gym that just have like machines. And so I don't think that people maybe even realize you can select so many different ways to work out or to train. I know like 24-hour fitness has changed a lot of what they have. They have turf in a lot of the gyms now. So there's areas where people can push and pull a sled and throw med balls and do more athletic stuff. Things are changing, quite a bit. And I just think that maybe people think they have to like go to the gym and then do this like hypertrophy protocol thing. And like a lot of that is a huge commitment, because when you're trying to lift for mainly just aesthetics, it is a 5 or 6 day a week game. Like there's just no way around it. Each time you go to the gym, there's a minimum of like 45 minutes kind of required of you. But I'd rather see people play the long game and not really worry about any of that bullshit. And just when you're exposed to it over a long period of time and you still get your curls in here and there and you still get a couple of these lifts here and there, you're going to look muscular. Now, you didn't take the fastest route there because you didn't like bulk and cut and so on. And like, you didn't follow the, real specifics of Dr. Mike Israetel talking about, what you need to do exactly for hypertrophy, but you followed your own heart and you followed what you want to do and you followed what you enjoy. Maybe you're occasionally like riding your bike on the weekends and so forth. And you're not caught up in like, oh my God, is this going to kill my gains type stuff. So I wish more people were exposed to gyms and fitness, maybe a little bit more the way that I was. And I think it'd be great for a lot of people to figure out how they can start to expose themselves to these things so that they can get involved in more than just like one way of like lifting weights.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought this up. This is something I wanted to ask you because, what we've been talking about with nutrition is kind of like a long period of time of learning from experiences and kind of being a little bit mature on the other end and saying, okay, this is what sense I've made of it. But I think the same thing with actual fitness and training is, I wasn't as a high level of competitor as you were, and I'm certainly not as strong as you are. But I kind of dedicated my whole youth to like being as strong as I could be. For strongman and
Mm-hmm.
training for hypertrophy and aesthetics as well. And I'm kind of coming to the point now where it's like I wish I had spent more time maintaining my athleticism as opposed to being like, I need to spend like 6 hours in the gym 5 to 6 days a week. It's just like, again, I would still have been jacked if I only lifted 2 to 3 days a week. But then, like I went surfing and I did boxing and I did jujitsu and played tennis. And so now like, I really barely lift anymore. And people still treat me like the meathead who like, it's too jacked. And that's actually, that is funny how this connects to diet. I don't have to eat nearly as much protein as I thought I did, and I don't have to lift nearly as much as I thought I did to still maintain tons of muscle. And so you can do like little periods where you like blast hypertrophy for like 3 months and then like pull back on it and then go enjoy a bunch of other things. And I know I've seen that you've been exploring functional patterns. That's something that I've kind of been playing with for a couple years now too. And it's like, not that either of us are like old geezers yet, but it's just like you don't want to have to lose something to then get it back. And that's where I feel like, there's really a lot of room to give people good recommendations on how to be a healthy, thriving performance athlete of a human being, and to do all the things that a human being can do.
Yeah, I think that's what we're looking for. And even with the nutrition side of things, and I think bringing in something like sugar fasting is now just giving you an ability to have a skill set to whip out whatever Swiss Army knife that you need, or whenever you do need a Swiss Army knife, you have multiple ways of dealing with particular situations and particular maybe inconveniences to your diet that we call life happening, where you go to a 4th of July party and you're now all of a sudden, what are you going to do at this 4th of July party? Maybe you're keto when you're there. Like, what's wrong with being keto for the day? Like, I understand, okay, you're not going to like get into like nutritional ketosis and so forth. And it takes 2 weeks or whatever to get in there. But you're just like, dive bombing your carbohydrates for the day because somebody cooked up a bitchin' ass tri-tip, and you're like, oh, there's sausage and there's tri-tip and there's all these things, and there's someone made a salad. I'll eat some of that. Oh, okay, well, maybe I'll have a little bit of fruit too. So the carbs are still low and modest, and you had something sweet. And so you can be a chameleon, you can kind of blend in with whatever environment that you're in, because you can eat whatever way you need to when you're adjusting. And I think the way that Cole is putting this diet forward, and some of those things that I'm putting forward as well, is like, you don't have to be stuck on just the sugar fast all the time. And for those that are powerlifting and for those that are bodybuilding and stuff, you don't have to be just stuck on being a bodybuilder. When I used to travel, I used to very rarely even bother to work out, because I was like, I'm not working out with somebody else's weights and somebody else's gym. That's crazy talk. I'm a power lifter, and I'm, squatting over 1,000 pounds and bench pressing over 800 pounds. So I'm not going to even, and, I just wasn't thinking, because I was tunnel vision on what my goals were at the time. And I didn't want to hurt myself, but it like never occurred to me like, hey, asshole, you could just lift lighter, and you could just do other exercises, but that just wasn't where my mind was at the time. And then as I got more mature and started to travel more, and it was still powerlifting, I was like, oh my God, it feels great to work out when I travel, because now I have other options in terms of what I'm doing. And so I'd be a bodybuilder for the day, or I'd stop into someone's CrossFit gym and I would do a CrossFit workout, and I would die. I would get completely killed doing it. Or I might pop into somewhere and be like, yeah, man, I want to learn how to lift that stone. I want to learn how to, do a farmer's carry. Like, I want someone to teach me, because just because you're like big and strong doesn't mean you have any clue on the technique of that might be utilized by an athlete, in a slightly different sport, even though people probably think that they're all the same: powerlifting, weightlifting, and strongman, but they couldn't be any more different. The technique and the requirements for each sport are quite different. I do think a strongman could probably do okay in powerlifting, but it's going to be kind of hard for most powerlifters to be able to jump into strongman without like learning it first. It's going to take some time, but I love all that. I love being able to, fit into different situations just by having like the correct knowledge.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because when we went to the strongman competition that we won, that to qualified us for nationals, we were all like the smallest people in our weight class. We were like the skinniest. We were the less filled out of the weight class, but we were the most athletic, and we were because our training program, the way Logan programmed our strongman programming, was like a conjugate inspired with with bands and chains and max effort days and dynamic effort days. And then we would have our strongman implements and movements in like CrossFit settings. And we just like, the people they looked like powerlifters, and we looked like recreational athletes or something. But we won until we got to nationals and was much heavier, and we got demolished. And everyone was also on steroids at nationals. But what I think about this perspective on nutrition and this perspective on training is it's freedom. It's giving you the freedom to navigate your daily life in any way that you want, and to know, like you said, what to do in any given situation. You go to the barbecue and you don't want to pig out on, you're gonna avoid the buns, maybe you're gonna avoid the potato salad, but you want to go all out on the meat and have a carnivore dinner. It's like you can kind of throw in a fruitarian this and a carnivore this and like a lean protein and starch this, and you kind of put them together, and here's all these building blocks. And I think and funny enough, I mean, I think the sugar diet and its structure is really valuable, but I think the sugar fasting is a great way to just get through people's head that like this is an incredible tool and you don't have to like skimp on the sugar. Because I still talk to people who they're trying it, but they're still restricting how much fruit and sugar they're eating during the day. And I know for myself, like this would have been like 12 years ago. I did a juice fast because we just graduated college, and my roommate and I were going to this yoga studio, and it was run by this like crazy raw vegan chick, and she was like, you guys just finished drinking and doing drugs for 4 years, come do this cleanse with me. And I didn't want to do it at all. I was like, fuck that, I'm not doing it. But my roommate said, I'm going to do it. And I go, shit, now I have to. And so we did that, and I lost 23 pounds in 12
Holy
days.
shit.
12 days. And and the way it is if you're ever hungry, drink juice. But it's mostly green juice, so the calories are low, the carbs are low. But I mean, and I wasn't like fat. I was still like an in shape college guy, and I got like super tightened up over like less than 2 weeks. And then when I went back to eating food, like I gained only like 5-7 pounds of water weight back. And then I was like, I'm just shredded now. That was cool. And so that really gave me like, I totally abandoned the concept, didn't really think about it. But now knowing what I know now about sugar, not that I'm saying everyone go out and do a juice fast with orange juice and do it for 2 weeks, but to do a day or two or three, because I did body fat testing when I did that. I didn't lose any muscle in 12 days. And it's such a powerful tool that it's like, hey man, if you are traveling, are you going to go out like, this guy just messaged me yesterday. It's like, I'm going out of town for a work convention. And it's like, dude, just go be fine. Go have dinner and drinks with your buddies or whatever. And then like for the next 2 days, just like pound fruit, nothing else. And and then he was like, I'm lighter now than I was before I left, and it's just like, it's that simple, but don't fear the sugar. And that's why I think like, the Ray Peat kind of sphere deserves a lot of credit, I think, for on a widespread cultural scale, kind of bringing the acceptance of sugar up a little bit. And then, but Durian Rider and like Freely the Banana Girl, like they've been hammering this stuff for over a decade. And I think I never thought I'd be watching vegan YouTubers, but I love Harley, his channel is amazing. And I can't wait until your episode with him comes out. But there's so many lessons in his thing about like, look at how your body uses sugar. It's not this like terrible thing. There's so much value in that.
Yeah, my wife is doing the diet as well, but it's like harder for her to like just commit. She doesn't really love that much like sweet stuff, and so she's like, she tried it for like a day or two, and then she went back to like eating normal or whatever. And I said, well, don't feel like you failed, because like you can just use it whenever you want, And she's like, yeah, I think I am going to do, I'll do the sugar fasting like just a couple days a week. And I said, yeah, I think that's because she was messing around with fasting and carnivore and keto, and she's messed around with all the different protocols, and she's jacked and like ripped and everything. But as usual, we all want more. But she did like the candy. She liked the candy side of things. She thought that was pretty fun. So I think she'll give it another go. I believe you've been mentioning that you haven't really lost much weight. Is that like do you have a goal to lose weight, or you don't really care that much about dropping weight?
Well, because I'm just too curious for my own good. I just experiment a lot. And so when I started really kind of leaning into the diet a few months ago, I was still eating a lot of starch for dinner. And so what I would do is I would have days where I wouldn't eat any protein, and I would just eat like an entire package of pasta, or like, 3 dry cups of rice or something, and I would be eating like 250 grams of carbs from pure starch for dinner. And I found myself like just still slightly like, what an amazing realization to go, I can just pig out on starch and I won't gain weight.
Hmm.
I'll just like maintain my weight. That's amazing. And then there was a little bit in there where I went out of town and traveled, and I was going to nice restaurants and just going out with family, and so my weight was kind of doing a little fluctuating. But lately, I've just been like super hard on the no starch element and doing some sugar fasting, and I just dropped 5 pounds like nothing. And so now that I feel like I wanted to lose weight the whole time, but I was also like, let me understand it and play with it. And now that I understand, at least for me, how much starch gets in the way of it, I'm kind of only like giving myself like one starch day a week, for instance, and doing more sugar fasting. And I feel so much just, I like so much lighter, and I'm burning hotter. Like, my metabolism feels stronger and warmer. And I, that's why it's like, I really want people to understand like the power of the sugar fasting day, and to keep the starch out of it if weight loss is their primary goal. And so now that's kind of, I'm going to really, really like push the gas pedal on no starch sugar fasting type for here probably until like I get down to, I mean, I'm like 205 pounds right now, and I want to be like 185 by the end of summer. And so that's kind of where I'm going to go. But I want to leave myself the freedom to still like enjoy myself with family and stuff. So I kind of put that it's not like I'm an obese person who needs to lose a bunch of weight for my health. So I'm not worried about getting there as fast as possible.
Yeah, and like I mentioned earlier, like doing things as fast as possible isn't always like the most important thing. So if you want to, you can sugar fast, you straight sugar fast, day in day out and lose weight the fastest. Like that's going to pull weight off you like crazy. Or I've been kind of making some differentiation between the two. There's kind of the sugar fasting, and then there's also like sort of like the sugar diet, or the maybe a slightly different way of eating, but you're still taking advantage of FGF21, and that's just like you having very lean meat with dinner and maybe having a starch. To me, that's like reasonable. That's not hard for me to do, and it's actually kind of like, as dull as it might sound to some people that don't really mess around with their diet too much, it's actually super exciting to have that like potato or have that rice in those days when you're not eating them. You're not consuming that every day, and so when you bring that back into the picture, it's kind of nice. And the way I like to look at it is, if you're able to if you're able to follow something with some sort of consistency, because you can't really, I don't think it's a good idea to like sugar fast and then not have any plan, unless that's like very occasionally, where you're just going to literally like just enjoy yourself for a day or something. I don't think that's that bad, but I don't think it's good to go from any diet to not having a diet. People used to say this about keto all the time, like, oh, keto, it doesn't work because when I did it for 3 months, and then when I came off it, I gained all my weight back. And you're like, what? What kind of sense does that make? Like, you were on a diet, and the diet assisted you to lose weight, but then when you no longer use that tool anymore, it stopped working for you. You're like, well, of course, that makes sense. So I think that people just need to be a little cautious with, if they are going to sugar fast, yes, it will pull weight off of you. But if you're just going to go back to like the standard American diet, or just have like some crap nutrition, you're just going to be yo-yoing all the time. You're going to be down 5 pounds, up 7 pounds, down 5 pounds, up 8 pounds, and so forth. And so I would caution people against, ending up in that realm. But I just want to reiterate, like, I did a 48-hour sugar fast and went from 212 to 208, like in that time period. Boom, just dropped, the scale dropped. I felt like I was eating a lot. And each night I finished the night off with a salad, which I haven't really heard that many people really talk about. But for me, the salad was satiating. It was like, I don't know, it just sort of felt like I was eating, like, every time I get a salad, it always has like steak or chicken in it or shrimp. So this was just like the same salad. It just didn't have any protein in it. But that's helping me drop weight like crazy. And I never really thought about low protein for dropping weight. I think there's a lot of people that speculate that, like, okay, well, you're going to be losing a lot of muscle when you do that. And they think, because I'm in the situation I'm in, because I, have a decent amount of muscle mass on me, that I could afford to lose it, and that maybe I don't care. But I do care. I don't want to lose muscle mass. But the question you have to kind of ask yourself is, why would your body, why would your body pull protein from your biceps or your quads or wherever? Why would your body take away your gains when your muscles are full of glycogen? It like doesn't make any sense at all. I suppose it might be possible because the human body's tricky and it does all kinds of weird, crazy stuff. But if you don't feel like you're in a caloric deficit, and maybe you're even not in a caloric deficit, like you feel well fed, and your glycogen stores are full, both in your liver and in your muscles, why in the hell would your body be like, hey, let's go through protein gluconeogenesis? Like, let's turn, some of this protein into sugar. There's no need to. Like, there's no reason for your body to try to take protein from your own body. The other thing that people are missing too, and this drives me crazy, because they're like, what about your hormones? What about this? And I think it's great that people are cautious and people are asking questions. But it's just kind of dumb. If you're losing body fat, the body fat on your body has nutritional value to it. It's not like it doesn't have any nutritional value to it. Like, you can look this up. Like, you can chat GPT this, or you can Google it, or whatever you want, but you can look this up. I mean, the dietary fat is very similar to the fat on your body. They're not identical. And obviously you can choose your dietary fat and you can get your omega-3s or something like that. So it's going to be somewhat different than the fat that you're pulling from your body. But because I've been recommending to a lot of people on these days where you're doing like the sugar diet, where you only have about 30 grams of fat, and you only have about for my body weight, I weigh around 200-ish. And I'm like, okay, I'll have 100 grams of protein for the day. The protein's only in the latter half of the day. I think that all those, even though those numbers sound low to people, I think they're perfectly healthy. Like, you don't have to have, 200 grams of protein a day. You don't have to have 100 grams of fat a day. And if somebody thinks it's like a little bit too extreme, then just go ahead and bump it up a little bit. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with, eating 40 or 50 grams of fat. But the research shows that when you're in some of the recommendations that I've been sharing, that you're not in some compromised state. And you won't be. Like, you just don't need the amount of fat and protein that you thought, and especially when you're having the carbohydrates with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, your body stores protein, it stores glycogen, and it stores fat, right? So your body you always have all of this stuff on you to use as you your body sees fit. But sugar is incredibly muscle sparing. And I've been going. I probably have been eating somewhere between 300 to 500 grams of protein a week for like 2 to 3 months now. And I mean, if I've lost some muscle, it's not noticeable. And like I said, I did a 12-day juice cleanse where I was eating not even just no protein, but very low calorie. And I looked very skinny. And then after just like a few days on regular food and doing a couple workouts, I just like totally filled back out to my
Right.
normal like glycogen. And Anabology actually posted a study on Twitter, and I shared it in one of my recent videos. And they actually did a study, funny enough, back in this past year on FGF21. And they took healthy young men and they restricted their protein for 5 weeks. And so they just gave them the requirement, like the basic minimum requirement that science says, which is 0.8 grams per kilogram. So like if you're like a 200 pound man and you weigh 90 kilos, that's like 70 that's like 70 to 80 grams of protein a day. Mm-hmm. Which like any people in the bodybuilding / normal fitness world would like look at you and just be like, you're going to lose all your gains, bro. Like, it's all going to go away. And our body just doesn't work like that. We're so much more resilient than that. And that's where it's like, you have to it's so hard to get that. It's like almost harder to get it through like the meathead's head versus like the more like, just like standard overweight person who needs to lose a bunch of weight. Like, they're willing to do it because they're not like married to the protein as much as those of us who feel like we spent all these years in our hard-earned gains. But even then, it's like I've felt too, if I lose a little bit of muscle, who cares? I can get it right back.
Mhm.
Like, it's not hard to do, and it's especially not hard to regain muscle that you've already lost.
When somebody loses substantial amounts of weight, you lose more than 3 pounds, 5 pounds, you start to lose like 5, 6, 7, 10% of your body weight, you're always going to lose a little bit of muscle mass, regardless of the diet. If there is a diet to protect your muscle, it might be this one. I mean, out of all the different options that you have, it's interesting because people will lower their calories and they don't have much concern over losing muscle mass. But I would definitely rest my entire career and everything I ever gained or earned from being on the internet and selling products on the internet. I would rest everything on saying that if you want to lose protein and lose, or if you want to lose muscle, the fastest way to get there wouldn't be being on the sugar diet. A faster way to get there would be to be low calorie. So if you're taking calories away and you're consistently in this caloric deficit, that is a great way to ensure that it's going to be very hard to build any further muscle. It's also going to be a great way to ensure that you're going to be losing some muscle mass at some point, because it's just that, to me, that makes sense. If you're in a pretty big caloric deficit and the body's not getting filled with some of the things that it needs, it's not getting the energy that it needs. It's not getting, I realize that fat and ketones can be protein sparing in some ways. All the macronutrients are protein sparing to some degree. But I think that the carbohydrates and having your body be full of this energy, again, it just doesn't make any sense to me that your body would want to reduce the muscle mass from you having this glycogen flowing through your system, because your body's really like, it's in search of, maybe to some extent, you got the Ted Naiman thing of the body is in search of protein. And maybe that's why this diet actually works so well, is that when you're on the sugar diet, you're like, holy shit, you just keep stuffing your face with all this fruit and vegetables and stuff. But your body's like, we didn't get the protein that we need. So keep eating, and you keep eating and eating. And you never do get that protein like satiation that you need. But maybe that's all part of the play. And maybe that's all part of the reason why your metabolism shoots up through the roof, because the body's like, holy shit, we have all this extra energy. Let's like ramp things up. But to me, that's even more proof and further proof as to it not making any sense for your body to like start to really reduce a lot of muscle mass. I do suppose that if you take these things to an extreme, and if you were to do a juice fast like you're mentioning, maybe over like a really long period of time, maybe that would cause some muscle wasting, especially if you're juicing and you're doing so more with vegetables, but the vegetables have protein in it. It's kind of just gets you in this kind of circular thing. But maybe with the vegetables and it being lower calorie, that would be something that could potentially have you lose some of your gains.
Well, I think one of the best ways to think about it is, what is like one of the best ways for your body to lose muscle is to do gluconeogenesis, right? And what triggers gluconeogenesis is cortisol, because your body needs a quick surge of glucose. And if you're flooding your system with sugar all day long, your one of the first things I learned when I started getting nutrition was that the way to get cortisol down is to eat sugar, right? And so there's a condition called Cushing syndrome,
Mm.
where it's basically like this pathological excess cortisol of the body. And you see it when people have like thin limbs. They have thin arms and legs, and all of their fat centered around their head, their face, their neck, and their torso. And what that literally is they have so much cortisol going through their body that it's breaking down all of the muscle in their extremities, because it's less important. And it's trying to protect itself, so it's putting all the fat on the center of the body and keeping itself warm. And so what you find is that when you eat a bunch of sugar, you take cortisol straight down. And so the amount that your body would ever break down your muscle tissue is drastically reduced. And your metabolic, and this is one thing I get from Ray Peat, is take your temperature, take your body temperature. If your temperature is still high and you're losing weight, then you know that your metabolism is still functioning really, really well. Like your waking temperature should be at like minimum like 97.7 degrees. If you after you eat, by noon you should be at like 98.6. People will report that when they do the sugar diet, all of a sudden they feel like warmer. They're like, man, I feel like I'm like burning hotter. Like this feels really good. And when your body is warm, and like wants to shed fat, it's this like kind of wonderful combination of your metabolism and what feels nice. And it's like the body is very, very smart, and it's responding to the signals that you give it. And so now it's just like, let's just make sure we really give it the right signals.
It's kind of weird because the fruit and some of the stuff I have is pretty cold too, so that's could be a factor. And obviously, if you're going to drink like a smoothie, that's going to be kind of cold. But like, it's making me feel cold, but it's also giving me like almost giving me like shivers. And I think like to me that might be some of the brown fat because I think you get that from cold plunging as well. And FGF21 is supposed to help your body to make more brown fat. I don't really know exactly what that is other than the food. The food is cold. It's still not that warm here in Sacramento. It is starting to heat up this time of year, but it's still been kind of cold. And I've noticed that from the diet, and I'm like, that's interesting because people have also reported that like their body feels hotter. I suppose that like, when I'm more removed from just the eating of the food, that yeah, maybe I'm my metabolism is like running higher or hotter or whatever. But have you noticed that? Have you noticed like feeling kind of cold when you get done with your meal?
So when I started the diet, I was eating a lot of frozen fruit, and I started to get like really shivered because I'd be eating like 3, 4 cups of frozen fruit.
Yeah.
And I actually feel like I was getting like negative effects from eating too much cold food. And so all that I started doing was I started, like, I call it sugar tea. It's just hot water with sugar. I mean, you can add lemon, you could add ginger, but it's like there's literally nothing in it. It's just hot water and sugar. And I started starting my days with that a couple days in a row, and like it fixed everything right away. And so I think there is actually like, um, I think this is probably like a little out there for maybe most people listening, but I like, and not that I'm even that well knowledgeable of it, but like the concept of like Chinese medicine is, there's a whole kind of thing about whether your body's hot or cold. And, if you've ever done like a diet that included a lot of cold food, like I did this raw food diet a few years ago where I ate raw meat and I drank raw milk and for, like that, but everything was like fresh out of the fridge. And the whole thing slowed my body down because everything was so cold,
Yeah.
and it doesn't feel good. And so all I did was, because I do like the smoothies. I mean, I live by the beach, and so it's getting pretty warm now. Um, but I noticed that if I was eating too much frozen fruit, I was starting to feel cold, like in general almost. And I felt like my metabolic rate was slowing down. And so all I did was hot sugar water, and like it fixed it right away. So I think if anyone is using a lot of smoothies and a lot of frozen fruit, and if they're not feeling cold, no problem whatsoever. But warm foods, you don't have to put necessarily sugar in it, but I figured I might as well. And this is another thing I think would be really useful for people is when you have your dinners, whether you want to eat a lean protein or whether you just want to go veggies. I know you said you like salad. I'm a really big fan of cooked veggies for dinner because I can eat like a really big bowl of it, and I feel like I'm getting more nutrition, like just more nourishing foods, the ones that you can cook and release a lot of the minerals out of it. And you can also have soup. You can, like, bone broth has no protein. Sorry, no fat in it, and the protein that's in bone broth is glycine, and it doesn't stop FGF21, unlike complete proteins. So a lot of people in the fitness world would say don't count protein for a collagen powder because it's not a complete protein and you can't build muscle from it. And this is actually a benefit because in this case you also aren't gonna you're still going to be able to get elicit the FGF21 increase. So one of my favorite things to have for dinner is bone broth with either a lean protein source and veggies, or just you can have like a veggie soup, something
Mm.
warm, and that'll be uh when I did the juice cleanse, at a certain point you start to feel like high, because like you are like severely uh calorically deprived, and your body's just like, I have no idea what's going on. And like, the hippy dippy kind of version of it is you don't have any grounding foods because you're not eating roots and you're not eating meat. You're eating everything that grows, from trees, and it's green and sweet or whatever. And so just including a grounding food with dinner, it might help people sleep better, have something warm, have some, non-starchy veggies. Like I've been having like zucchini and squash and cucumbers and stuff like that. But yeah, I think soup and broth can really help just give someone like a savory feeling on a sweet diet.
Isn't it annoying how much stuff has fat in it?
Well, okay, so uh, here's the reason why I think low carb diets are, and I feel like I've heard you talk about this years ago with like the war on carbs. It's really easy to just not eat carbs. When you go out to a restaurant, for instance, no bread, no bun on my burger, no potatoes. I'll get a salad instead. Um, it's really easy to avoid carbs, but like fat is like invisible. Like you don't see the oil that your food is cooked in.
And even just thinking about like candy, like when you first start looking at like some of these candies have oils in them, and you're like, shit, man, I didn't know that that had fat in it. But I try to, some people are doing the diet and they're trying the diet and they're doing the best they can with it. But I think they don't. Sometimes people don't understand like the nuances. They matter. Like you don't have to be crazy about them, and it's okay to take your time, like in learning them. But um, I think sometimes you tell people like, hey, don't have any fat, don't have any protein when you're sugar fasting. Throughout the day, you're just having mainly fruit juice, and so forth. Um, and they're still like getting like little amounts of fat in there and not even really paying attention to it. And then maybe there's some protein in there too. They're still throwing like a protein in their smoothie and stuff like that, which I don't think is like, I don't think any of it's bad. I think people kind of owe it to themselves to like just actually really try this as strict as you can. Um, it's not going to feel as strict or restrictive as you may think when you just give it a shot, because the sugar will actually take over. The sugar will take over for your caffeine. The sugar will take over for a lot of these little things that you like to hit yourself with every single day, the creamer in your coffee or whatever these things are that you normally do. Um, they're going to slowly get replaced by sugar. And if they don't, it's not a big deal. If you still really love those things and you're still, into those things, I think that's fine. But just, give it an honest go, like give it an honest shot. And I would also encourage people to do like a sugar fast for like 48 hours. Just try 48 hours is very, very easy. Many of you listening have fasted before with no food, with just water for 48 hours. So give it a shot. I don't think there's anything to lose with trying it out.
Yeah, I that's kind of one of the reasons why I want people to really understand the sugar fast. And I feel like if they understand the sugar fast, they'll understand the sugar diet even better. And so, really hammering on no protein, no fat, no starch. Just like you can't have any protein, you can't have any fat, you can't have any starch. That is the sugar part of the day, right? So if you can understand a whole day of that, now just condense that into from morning time until dinner. And that's another thing I want. I feel like it's good for people to understand is when they have like a craving of something, you'd be surprised that like just having, not that this is like a solid food choice, but just having some sugar in water can totally stop your hunger.
Mm.
And I think that's a really good sign. And one thing that Cole talks about, and I forget where I got this from, but we tend to associate starch with salt because most of the time that's like a vehicle for our salty foods. And so a lot of times people have cravings for starchy foods. They're literally just deficient in salt. And so again, this isn't a way to do a diet, but like as an experiment, if someone were to take like a jug of water and a bowl of salt and a bowl of sugar, and whenever they wanted any sort of, you can only have one of those three things or in any combination you'd like, you'd be amazed at how many of your cravings could just be stopped on the spot with those things. And the more that you understand that, then the better control you can have. And so, I like to have a little spoonful of salt first thing in the morning. I just like chug it down with some orange juice or something. just because, I feel like if I don't do that, at some point the day will carry on and I'll be like, man, I feel like I really need salt. And so you just can get ahead of these things. And again, it's like, I hope that we can kind of give people some tips and some advice, but for, to then people to use an experiment so they can understand how to be more successful with this.
I think that's like next level sugar diet is like literally only eating sugar and having some salt. And then occasionally just, you have that like in like a little bucket in your house and you just grab a scoop of it here and there and just dump it into some water. You don't even eat
Look,
anything. You just straight sugar and
you
some
become
salt
like
and
a
some
like a
water and put it
horse.
on repeat.
You're a horse. You have your salt lick and you have your sugar sugar
Yeah,
cubes.
yeah, exactly.
Well, cool, man. I really appreciate you coming on. I think that again, I think this is something really, really big. Like we have no idea how big this is going to be. Like we're watching like a fad be created like in real time, but I think this is much, much greater than a fad. And I really hope we can um, kind of lead this in a way where we make sure that people don't get effectively stupid with it. Like we really want to help people with this. And one thing I really wanted to say too was I'm very similar to you in that when I get into something, I get obsessed with it. And it's like you've been making like 3 videos a day on sugar diet, and I haven't been on that level, but I've still like every single one of my videos has still been about it. And it's just like I can't help myself from telling people about it because I feel so good and it's so exciting to me. And I feel like we can really get a lot of people to play with this and learn so much more about it.
Yeah, and hopefully, hopefully I won't have to make 3 videos a day. Hopefully, the rest of the internet takes over. Because you're starting to see that. You're starting to see more people make more videos, and I believe I'm going to be on Joe Rogan talking about this in no time flat, and that will help blow up the mission. I don't have any. There's no. I don't have anything to gain from it. I just literally just. I mean, obviously, I guess it could be like popularity or something like that, followers, I guess you'd say, and YouTube money, right? But there's no product to sell with this. I mean, talking about low protein does not help my Within You brand products. I sell Steak Shake and all the other things that people might know me for. It's not helpful, right? But the diet is helpful, and I want to help people lose weight. I want to help people because I think weight loss is the backbone of fixing a lot of people's mental health. Whether it's a kid that's gained a lot of weight or whether it's an adult that's gained a lot of weight, I think it's in the background. It's in the background of everyone's day to day of things to like get to, things to do. Kind of like your messy closet or your messy room or your pile that you have of whatever it is that you didn't clean up at your house or in your car or whatever. Except for this is like you're wearing it. It's part of your avatar. People see it every day, and it's shameful. Like you don't like it. You know that you used to look a different way, and now that you look worse, and you don't feel great about that. You don't smile as much. You're not as um, it's harder to do everything. The more that you weigh, the harder it is to do even the smallest tasks. And I think that this is really plaguing us uh, in 2025. I think it's like the most important thing for us to fix is our health. And I think that not necessarily just this diet, but I think the ability to understand many different diets and to be able to understand many different types of activity and exercise. I think all these things play into it. And I think they can be really important in helping people uh, to just lose that weight that they haven't gotten around to losing. And if you really think about it, most diets are pretty disheartening. You try a keto diet, try a carnivore diet. Sometimes they have like a little bit of like right away, you like lose a little bit of weight. Try most diets and you usually don't lose weight. Like you're on the diet for 2 weeks. Someone's like, "Hey, how's it going?" You're like, "Well, I don't know. Like I lost a little bit and then it kind of got stuck." And then they'll lose a little bit again and get stuck and so on. It's very annoying and very discouraging. This diet is you sugar fast, you lose weight. If you sugar fast, you might lose half a pound a day or even a full pound a day. Some people are reporting. We've never had a diet do that before. We've never seen that before. That's amazing. And that could be something that could help us get out of this like obesity crisis that we're in. I mean, literally, it could help us. Every single person that is 500 pounds or 400 pounds to lose 100 pounds, 200 pounds, and so on, by utilizing this strategy, it's going to help people to lose weight. I mean, I'm seeing it too much in the comment section for it to be fake, unless there's a bunch of like bots or something like that are obese and they're claiming some weight loss. But I think it's real, and I think it's here to stay.
Yeah, I feel like you said like it's fasting without fasting. And because everyone's so overweight, there's a lot of interest in weight loss and health from people. And what we really want to do is we want to make sure that people aren't, like you said, they lose some weight and then they gain more back, right? Like a family friend, she went keto and she lost 60 pounds and then she gained it all back. And it's just like, imagine how demoralizing that is for that person. And not only that, they're worse off than when they started. And that's where, you mentioned Rogan. Like Rogan still kind of thinks that like sugar is like the cause of all the problems. And like, RFK like says like that sugar is poison.
I'll straighten everybody out. You'll see.
Yeah, I mean, that's what no, seriously, that's what we have to do, because, we might be seeing a lot of health changes for the first time that we've ever seen. And it would be such a terrible thing if we got, stuff happening that actually made things worse. Like I lived in it when I lived in Colorado, I lived in Boulder, and they have a sugar tax. And so if I went to the McDonald's drive-through to get a Coca-Cola, it was 30 cents more expensive than if I drove 5 minutes the other way and went to the McDonald's down the street. And so, I think like there's a really big cultural wide thing to get people to realize that like sugar's not bad. And, especially because think about how popular Ozempic is getting and these other various medications. These are destroying people's health. And all these people who are trying to, like, what a horrible thing for someone to like have the willpower to lose weight and then to actually just hurt themselves. And so I think, just like we saw with saturated fat and red meat and butter and eggs, we got people to maybe not like the mainstream consensus, but we got enough people to realize that these things are good and healthy and not bad for you. Like we have to do the same thing with sugar, or we're going to see, serious problems.
I agree.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for being here again. I think sugar diet is amazing, and you probably having the biggest platform out of anyone talking about it. You're doing something really, really special here. Is there anything that you want to leave people with, or send them to look up for you?
Just get after it every single day. Get yourself acquainted with some sort of exercise. I just want to encourage people. That's mainly what I'm here for. If you want to check out my YouTube channel, it's Mark Smelly Bell. I appreciate all the people that have been tuning in, the people who have been commenting, the people who have been watching the live, and the people that are following me on Instagram. Thank you to everybody. Really, really appreciate it.
All right. See everybody.